What's up, everybody? This is Storm Batiste.
And this is BA.
And welcome back to another episode of Made Men Podcast. Bringing you everything that we think every man should know, no matter if you're white, black,
skinny, or fat.
These are the facts and everything that we think every man of the 21st century should know about savings,
investing,
dating,
and everything else in between.
Awesome. So everybody, welcome to the podcast. Welcome to the Made Man Podcast. I got a lot of energy today.
Why is that?
So, man, you know what? I have a lot of energy. I mean, it's a lot of stuff right now in the world that, can make me feel negative about a lot of things, make me feel down, but I'm choosing to be positive and to feel really energetic. First of all, I want to start off by saying thank you, beautiful black and brown women. I love you. I appreciate you. You are appreciated. That's aunties, that's sisters, that's grandmas, that's everybody. Like, we appreciate what you do. We love you. And that's everybody that's listening to the podcast. So I just wanted to start off with that kind of energy, letting y'all know that you are highly appreciated and that this episode is for you to, get off whatever in your chest that you have. We're going to cover some really, really interesting stuff. But before we do that, let's go ahead and introduce our guests that we have today. Y'all can start with whoever would like to start first.
All right. Thank you. So my name is Kandyce Anderson Amie. I am from suburbs of Indiana, but now I'm in Madison, Wisconsin. I am also a PhD student at UW-Madison up here, studying education, and blackness, basically. So I'm just here, and I'm excited to be here. Yes, that's all I'm going to say. I'm excited to be here.
Okay. So I'm Katiuska Herrand. I am an educator. I just recently finished my second master's as well as turned 30.
Hey, okay. Happy belated. Okay.
Happy I made it. But also happy to be on the podcast today.
Thank you.
Excellent. Wait, and where are you from again?
Oh, New York all day.
Hey, born and raised. What part of New York?
I'm from Queens. Anybody who hates.
Yo, why we gotta hate on Queens? I love people from Queens.
You got good taste.
Hello, I'm Felicia Santiago. I was born and raised in Brooklyn, New York. I currently live in Queens. Hello.
Okay.
And I do a lot of social justice work in different areas, whether it is working in incarceration facilities or starting a nonprofit with in connection with the CDC about gun violence, and I do other things. So
Cool. Well, it's basically, we got an all-star group of people in here today.
Oh my God, yes.
Did you hear them go through? Educators, PhD students, social justice, like advocates for real. So this will be an interesting episode. And like Storm said in the beginning, like, we have some really, really interesting questions that we would appreciate your perspective on, especially as Black women. We just want to provide the space for you all to, talk more about your experience, and also just talk about, we're going to cover it, but just what does like protecting Black women mean, or what does protecting women mean, and how is that more of an action item rather than just like a repost on Instagram? So before we get into that, I'm gonna pass it back over to Storm, and we're gonna go through our polls.
Cool. So yeah, I like to do this poll just because it does it makes a lot of people feel included, and plus it's just really a good icebreaker to get everybody just kind of relaxed a little bit. I don't know if y'all been on the podcast before, but it's completely low pressure on here, so I hope everybody's relaxed. I don't know if y'all drinking, but Made Man, we usually like to have a little cup of something before we get started. So I'm drinking a little whiskey. It's a Monday night, but I'm drinking a little whiskey, so I'm not upset about that at all. So I'm gonna run through this poll really quick. So the poll question, and let me know if y'all need me to repeat it. But the poll is, there's always that one person that is an exception to the rule. So it's either yes or no, and then just give me like a reason why.
I think it depends. I think there's like still further context to be developed in those scenarios. So it's like certain things, like let's think about like that invisible checklist, the do you got a job? Do you have kids? Ever been to prison? Like this really contrived list that we come up with that varies from woman to woman. But like that stuff always feels like very topical. It's something that we put a lot of weight and emphasis on, but to me, it's still very topical. But I feel like, so I guess in those ways, it's like, yeah, there's always an exception. There's always that one guy that got 2 kids and I wasn't planning on messing around with him. And, you know, and that one guy, he don't drive, but he's cute. So I'll do it, you know, like exceptions in that way. But there are things about me, like my political stances, my code of ethics, my sense of morality that like there would never be an exception on. Like you could never be homophobic. You can never be transphobic. You can never be racist. Like there is no exception to those
So it's
things.
definitely deal breakers for sure. Like,
oh, absolutely.
No matter what.
Yeah.
Cool.
I will parrot that because I wasn't sure whether I was going to go the negative way or the positive way, you know. But definitely there are things that you just cannot, they're the deal breakers, right? But I think there's also like the exception to the rule. Like that's a good thing. Like I married my exception to my rule. Like, you know, like, and I won't even go into too much detail, but you know, like when you get that really good connection and you just vibe and like things go a little bit faster before it to go, you know, there's an exception to your timeline sometimes. Yeah, he was an exception to my timeline. So that's we're gonna leave it at that.
Okay.
Shout out to that king. I know him personally. That's one of my best friends. So yeah, he's definitely an exception. Like, don't be mad about it. I'm glad y'all together. I was there.
Can you repeat the question just so I can answer it concisely?
Yeah. So there's always that one person that's an exception to the rule.
I don't think it's just one. I think it's multiple. I think that just because of the way that the journey is, we think we have an expectation of what we want. And then I think the whole purpose of dating is to figure out what that fit is for you. So then you start adding things onto your list. You start taking things off your list. And for example, I think some of those things are flexible. Like, all right, maybe I don't particularly like sarcasm, but on someone, I understand it and we can connect through that. On someone else, it just looks like you're being an asshole. You know, so I think it's those rules. Some of them are flexible, and then the deal breakers are things that are values, and those things are the ones that'll keep you together. That's what makes turns a passionate relationship into a companionate relationship. If we're looking at the different forms of love.
Fair enough. Is there an exception to the rule? Or they gotta match off every checkbox?
You know, I think as a guy, it's a little bit different, maybe, because I think like we're like into the physical most of the time, so like that's what gets our attention initially, and then like I guess if we start to like you later on, it's like, oh yeah, this is nice. But exception to the rules, like, no, I mean, how can I put it? I think that I don't really have any exceptions to the rule. Like, I think that, you know, I have preferences. I prefer Black women. I prefer women with natural hair. Like, I have preferences, but as far as like value system, I would have to agree with everybody else. Like, I think that there are some non-negotiables around that. Like, you know, believing in a higher power, and that higher power is God, you know. Just being like educated, like being able to have intellectual conversations, like just to help stimulate my mind, provided me with perspective. Just really like things that, you know, really help us both grow within a relationship. So I think like it just comes more so from the values and morals perspective. Those are the non-negotiables. But I think with a man, it's usually the non-negotiables are probably around physical appearance for the most part. And I'm just saying, generally speaking, I know it's not like that for every girl, but I think that, you know, it's more so like morals and values. Like those are things that, you know, I think those are non-negotiables. But, you know, that's just me. What about you?
I got you. I'm going to go with, yes, there's an exception. Everybody is an exception to the rules because, in my opinion, nobody is going to ever match off every like item on the checklist ever, no matter who it is. Like maybe to a degree, they might have potential to do that. But I learned a long time ago, you don't change people. People don't want to change. Like you can't make them change unless they want to. So yeah, everybody's an exception to the rule. in my opinion. So if somebody asks me, is there an exception? Yes. Everybody I've ever dated in my life has been an exception to the rule. I used to have an impossible checklist or system of check boxes that I wanted them to fill off. And I was like, damn, I can't find, like, she's doing this, but she don't have this. So like, damn, she has this, but she don't have this. Like, fuck, like, who am I looking for? And the truth is that person doesn't exist because nobody's ever going to match off every checkbox. And so, yeah, it's definitely exceptions to the rule.
I don't know.
In terms of what everybody else,
I don't know about all that. Like, I just think that, you know, maybe it's just me. Like, I personally have never had like a checklist. I think I just learned through experience for the most part. Like, I'm able to figure out like what I want in a woman through different types of women that I'm with.
I mean, you just said physical attraction. That's a checkbox. Like, that's a part of the list.
So could you possibly mean that there's a difference between a checklist versus standards, right? Because like the standards are, this is what the basics and the foundation needs to be in a relationship, as opposed to a checklist, then that might be specific for a person. So it's like, these are standards that I have in a relationship, as opposed to a checklist might be, these are things that I look for in a person. And I think those two things are not necessarily interchangeable. However, I can see how they may overlap for some people.
I think that they definitely inform one another.
They absolutely.
I would assume that whatever is on your checklist would have to exist in your standards, otherwise I'm like, why is it being applied? So I definitely feel like they inform, and I think maybe it's just like a matter of just jargon at the moment, right? Like we're getting into like semantics of like, is it a checklist or is it this, or is it like just a matter of a culmination of experiences? Like, you know, like I'm not literally walking around with it's not in my notes, you know, in my application on my phone, and I'm literally like going a day, I'm gonna get these 3 bullets off because he done did it.
You got the notepad out. What you mean?
You know, like, it's not doing that. But I think I think we're all envisioning the same thing, but we're just like calling it something differently potentially. But I guess, yeah, to me, it just really just does sound like standards. Just like standards are like needs. Like, this is what you need from someone. This is what you need from a relationship, whether it's platonic or romantic. Like, we have the checklist for all of our interactions. You know, I have needs from my boss. You know, like I have needs from my students that I teach. So just like, yeah, I think it's just a matter of like, because if not, then you're just kind of shadow boxing.
Cool. So the way that the poll was set up, it said that 67% of people said yes, and 33% of people said no. So most people was like, yeah, it's definitely an exception to the rule. Everybody got their own thing. That's just what the majority, I think it was something around like 40, 45 people each way that went. So, I mean, I guess that's just something to think about. Let's roll into the quote of the day. So this quote, I really, really, really like this quote. So it says, merely by describing yourself as Black, you have started on a road towards emancipation. You have committed yourself to a fight against all forces that seek to use your Blackness as a stamp that marks you out as a subservient being.
All right, so like I was having a conversation with Kandyce the other day. She's my best friend. Hey, shout out. And
y'all cute.
And so the discussion was, and she's asked me this before in our friendship, like, do I consider myself Black? And for a while, I've always been trepidatious to answer that question because I've always taken it off of who the other people were in the room. Like, will they allow me to say that? And so it's like, so at the end of, by the time that conversation was done, it was like, okay, no, you're right. I do have to say it regardless of who's around and regardless of what their opinion is of it, because you can't please everybody and I'm not out here to please everybody. So it was very freeing to say, yes, I do identify as Black, even though, you know, in school, in the 3rd grade, my Black teacher, Ms. Johnson, shout out Ms. Johnson, told me that I can't consider myself Black. So when I came in with a report on an Afro-Latino to school for Black History Month, she was like, this doesn't qualify, do it over again. You're not Black, like these people aren't Black. And so like even since then, and I'm just like, this Black woman is telling me that I'm not Black, so I guess I'm not. And then in another context, someone was just like, yeah, you know, like my boss, we always had conversations about anything and everything under the sun. He said, yeah, I consider everybody that's not white Black. Like, yo, you Asian, yo, you my brother. Like, we're all in this struggle together. And so you're Black. And so in that context, I was like, yeah, sure. Like, I feel free and liberated now to say what it is that I feel. Like, not in a Rachel Dolezal type of way, you know, because that's not a thing. But in a way that I know what my diaspora is, and I can claim that. And from there, I'm no longer under the guise of how do I please someone who does not identify the way that I identify, who may have been whitewashed with the notion of what is Blackness. So yeah, that's how that quote resonates with me.
Appreciate you saying.
Now I want to actually jump on off of that as well. Remember in that conversation we was talking about Blackness being a location in society, as well as the culture that we are a part of, that I am a part of, that I am connected to, the community that I'm connected to, and that Blackness. Well, in the relation to that quote, it's saying that once you claim Blackness, you are already on the road towards a process, towards a liberation. It is stating a truth and a reality and an experience that then calls for it to be rectified, like calls for us to remember that being Black relates to having this this history of extreme oppression. Being Black means that people can look at you and decide that you are not worthy of living. Like being Black means so many things. So that experience, both beautiful and terrifying, like calls into action, like just in its being.
Think about what Kandyce just said. When you sent over kind of the questions that we would be going through today, and that was the first one, and thinking about what my answer was going to be to it, and thinking that immediately I just felt like being Black and identifying as Black is a very active identity. Like you are very actively aware of yourself. It is something that you like live and experience in a very vivid way on a daily basis. And so just thinking about that, it is also felt like a responsibility to me to be Black. Like this is heavy responsibility that I had to myself, that I had to the community, that I had to people that I knew and people that I didn't know, that I had to like my responsibility of carrying a legacy, of representing everyone at every moment. It just feels so active. Like, I don't know, like I feel like there are some other identities that they really can lie dormant. Like certain parts of your identity can lie dormant. And I just feel like Blackness, like that part of your identity is never dormant. It is like the most hyperactive thing, because it's not only how you are grappling with it, but it's the fact that like the world is very obsessed with having you react to it and placing things in your way as a reaction to your Blackness. And so it just feels like it is thinking about like intersectionality, how everything about who we are is interweaving with one another, and it all seems to hit at some point, and it feels like Blackness is like at the center of it all. Like everything always comes through that as well. And so, yeah, I think that really rang true, and really more so as Kandyce was highlighting, like that latter part of like what comes with it, that it is a very active experience, that there are a lot of things to unpack, that there are a lot of responsibilities and roles that you then just kind of naturally inherit.
Facts. Big fact.
So all good, Reed. Thank you for each of you all for sharing that. And I think that what I kind of took away from this quote was it seems like I was so empowered, and I'm thankful for the way my parents raised me. I think that I was so empowered at an early age. And this is something that I was thinking about throughout last week. So my parents always like did this thing as far as like making sure that I had the knowledge of, you know, where I came from and just where my people came from. Like, you know, always at an early age, just telling me like whatever they're telling you in social studies class, like it's not true. Like you didn't start off as a slave in this country. Some of your ancestors may be slaves, but you know, like you're not just, your lineage does not start with slavery. And I think that my parents also taught me things around like something called the Black value system. And it was a part of the church that I went to, and just like, you know, how to build your community and how to give back into your community, and also how to be empowered by your Blackness. And then I was looking at these poems that I had to learn growing up because of the different types of groups that I was a part of. And like I was a part of this church group called Isutu, which is Swahili for coming into manhood, right? And this was specifically for young Black men, and from ages like 8 to like 18. And I was in that program since then, and like the poems that I would have to learn, and I was just looking at it, and some of the pieces were like, we are sons in the African diaspora, descendants of kings and queens, farmers and builders, the inheritors of a golden past and an unlimited future. And like, this is stuff that I was just saying like when I was younger, and I hated learning it, but the way it just resonates with me now and how, it connects with my Blackness. And then when I was in high school, I had to learn another creed because I went to an all male African-American high school. And I had to learn a creed just to talk about what my beliefs are, what my belief system should be. And a piece of that was just, we will not falter in the face of any obstacle placed before us. We are dedicated, committed, and focused. We will never succumb to mediocrity, uncertainty, or fear. We never fail because we never give up. We make no excuses. So it's just like, it seems like I was made just to be, I guess I'm not made to be Black. I don't want to put it like that, but it was like,
you were.
I was just made to just, really embrace who I am. So it's never been a question of like, emancipation. It was just like, how are you going to not only empower yourself, but also just your community? How are you going to build those up around you? So, the quote definitely resonates with me, but in a slightly different way, because it's just like my Blackness has always been something that I was told to embrace and something that I should never, look at as a negative. Like, yes, it's a lot of responsibility that may come with it, but look at your lineage. Like, why wouldn't it be like so much responsibility that comes with who you are and where you come from?
Got you. The way I look at the quote and what I took away from it is that, and I'm sure y'all heard this before, but like just being born Black is like already part of the struggle. Like just being Black, being born Black, you automatically know that you're gonna have to work 3 times as hard. Everything that you want in life, you're gonna have to take because it's not gonna be given to you. Even some Black people that are more privileged than others, like you still at some point in your life, you're gonna have to work and put in extra work more so than that counterpart that doesn't necessarily look like you. Or you might even be smarter than, like, you're still gonna have to work. And so that's kind of what I'm taking away from it. It doesn't get easier just being born into the struggle, quote unquote. Like it's not, we don't have any privilege. It's not equal across the board. We are in a country that we just brought to. And so everything you do, you really have to do it as if like your life depends on it, if you really want to move forward in it. And unfortunately, that's not what you would call quote unquote fair, but that is the way that things are. And it's because of your Blackness, it's because of your skin that you are always going to be looked at as subservient, or, you're lesser than somebody else. And it's like the darker you are, the lesser that you are. And unfortunately, that does suck. But that's kind of what I gather from the quote. And I hate it, but it's true. And I feel like all of us, like, how they used to say, oh yeah, Black people got an extra ligament in their legs so they can, jump higher, or like Black people can rap and like all that stuff. Like they say Black people are more resilient than white people, like stronger and everything like that. Well, hell yeah, we are. Like, not in that context, but yes, we are. We were born into this shit. Like our surroundings have created us into these stronger beings that we have no choice but to be if we want to move forward. Like that is the only option that we have. So yeah, hell yeah, we stronger than a lot of other people, and it's not by choice. It's by the fact that we were just simply born a certain color, that we have to create this resilience. We have to create this extra strength and work 3 times harder. So yeah, that's what I took away from the quote. And it doesn't get easier now. Hopefully it changes in this lifetime. I probably won't, but hopefully our kids can experience something a little bit better than what we did, just like our great-grandfathers and ancestors fought for us to experience what they couldn't, right? So I appreciate y'all sharing y'all's thoughts on the quote. Really insightful, which I'm not surprised. I knew it was going to be. We had some really some intellectuals here on the podcast, so I'm excited on what kind of perspective y'all are going to be able to give me for some of the stuff that we're going to cover. So let's go ahead and dive into the topic. First off, though, before we get started, just so people have an idea, we do want to cover, what that struggle is of a Black woman or somebody identifying as Afro-Latina, right? Obviously, you ain't white, so even if your struggle ain't as bad as the next person, you still got struggle. And I want to unpack that. a little bit. I wanna get into that, what that looks like, and what's special about each one of you guys is that everybody has their own unique walk of life that they went through to get up to this point. And so I want all of that to come out here on this podcast today. So let's go ahead and get this topic underway. Bia, you want to take away the first question?
Of course. So just to pop it off. So I think we kind of touched on this already, but if you all could kind of sum up just what does being Black mean to you?
Jump into the double dutch. All right.
Yeah, let's do it.
So thinking about thinking before, right, of like what I had kind of touched on, like being Black feels, it tells me who I am, both in a very like present, in the state of now kind of way, and thinking historically of who I am. It again feels like the center of all these intersections. It often feels like this explanation. Like when I consider the successes and what those have been like, and when I consider the traumas and the different forms of oppression that I feel that I've had to combat and will continue to combat, it feels like an explanation for that. It feels political.
Mm-hmm.
It feels deeply political.
Mm-hmm.
More so now, probably, and I can't speak because this is the only existence for myself, but thinking of it just, I'm sure it's always felt political. But just thinking right now, 2020, what we're enduring, the series of pandemics that people in our community are combating at the moment, like it feels very political. It, in the same ways that and not limiting, that word comes to mind, but I think that's that's the part of a taught narrative that we're given, and to like just only see the struggle in the need to persevere, and not like seeing the beauty of like what the tools that you gain, knowing that like I can be knocked down 1,000,001 times and I absolutely know a way to get up. And feeling that in so many ways, like that should probably something that just comes from character building in life, but it just seems so specific to this identity, to this culture, to this experience. And so being Black, it means everything. It means absolutely everything to me in like 1,000,001 ways.
And my bad, I didn't even ask you this. So like you identify as Afro-Latina, right?
If you ask me what I am, the first thing I will say is Black. Okay. The problem is that people, I've learned, have a really limited conceptualization of what Black means, specifically in this country. And like really don't see and understand and acknowledge that it is an international identity that has been an international identity for forever. Mm-hmm. And so in considering that, I think I'm like, I'm Black, and it's always, what kind, or what are you mix? What you got? And,
I've done that before.
it's I don't fault people because it's just it happens so often that I do feel that at some point you can't blame everybody for everything they've been taught, because we've been heavily programmed, and like that just doesn't seem like a big win. But so I feel like when I know that anticipated follow-up question of what kind, I do the Afro-Latin, Afro-Latino, or Afro-Latinx. And really what I feel I'm saying with that is just like further identifying a culture or further identifying a language, because I am also an Afro-Latina that comes from the Caribbean, which is different.
Wait, so Afro-Latina, like just so the definition. So for Afro-Latina means that both of your parents are Spanish, right? And you identify with your African-American roots, or like you? No.
So both of your parents can't. So this is the thing about jargon and like language and how we use it, right? Because if you're Spanish, you're really just from Spain. And we are just we're Black people speaking Spanish because that is how the colonial history laid ahead of us, and so that is just what happened. But a lot of Afro-Latino people some are African-American and then some level of Spanish-speaking identity. Most people that I know that identify as Afro-Latino or Afro-Latina are Cuban, Puerto Rican, Dominican, Panamanian, Belizean, like spaces that are already known to be like Black or brown Spanish speaking spaces predominantly. And so Afro-Latinx is really just an identification of like, there is African ancestry here within my bloodline.
Yeah,
It's not something that can be negated.
I got you. All right.
Like, as I think about how much I know about jargon and language, I even, Felicia was earlier explaining to me the difference between Hispanic and Latinx and how we like put that together, and it's not actually supposed to be together. So thank you for that. And I also wanted to say too, to add on to what you were talking about Blackness being beautiful, I guess, and when I'm thinking about what does it mean to be Black, the first thing that's coming to mind is roses in the concrete, right? It is beauty in such a way that comes from pain, and I think I resonate with that very deeply because I grew up in such a white area. Yeah. That it felt so lonely. And I had to continually, either whether it was from my parents being really intentional about telling me who I was and telling me my history, like you said, Brian, or just being intentional about speaking life into myself, like the actual thought of cultivating yourself in an environment that was not meant for you to grow. Like that's what I keep thinking about when I think of Blackness. And being Black to me encapsulates like both sides. Like you can't, in my mind, it's complicated, right? Like it is both terror, but also beauty in a way that this world doesn't really understand. You know, they don't know what to do with us. And so I think about what that affords us. I think of it as like power, right? The fact that we have a clarity, like James Baldwin talks about the clarity, and W.B. Du Bois talks about this double consciousness that we are having because of our Blackness, because we can see beyond a veil into both the lives of white folk and also understanding where we fit in that. And so that's when I'm thinking of Blackness, like I'm really, and I'm keep saying really, because when you start doing PhD work around trying to explain these things, like it gets real deep. I won't even put you through that. But like I'm thinking about this all the time. What does it really mean? And what does that mean for our kids as we're bringing up a new generation, like that we want to have a better life than the one we have now. So I'm just continuing thinking about that.
Yeah. Yes, ma'am. It's a both.
Just go agree with both.
Yeah.
So I guess Kandyce, like I like that bar that you had about, you know, trying to cultivate. You said something trying to cultivate rose.
Trying to cultivate life.
In an environment that's not meant for you, in an area that is not meant for you to really survive. So I really love that. So I guess the next question that I have for you all is really just around your experience. So just being not only Black, but also being a woman, there are some things that you all experience that a lot of people will never understand, will never comprehend. So in speaking about you all's backgrounds and where you come from, what are just some micro traumas that you all have had? Just, you know, whether it be your childhood, whether it be just on a day-to-day basis, like what are just some micro traumas that you all may have to endure, and how have you been able to really just navigate through those situations?
Yeah, I'm thinking about it because I do have the privilege of being light-skinned, and I have so that in itself, like the microaggressions that I've experienced have personally not been, again, this is not the Oppression Olympics, right? But it has not been as traumatic as what I know it may have been for people who have darker skin than I do.
Facts. Big facts. Yes.
And so, like, I know that is a privilege that I carry. But I mean, I've experienced things, but I don't think any of them have been specific to being this, like the how do I put this? The mainstream media identification of Black. I remember there was one time I was trying to babysit someone's kid in Indiana. And so then at first they were like, I don't like your hair. And I'm like, okay. And so then the mom was just like, oh, it's okay. Her hair is just long, you know? Not everyone cut their hair. Next day I came back and I gave him, I made him some chocolate milk. And he's like, how'd your skin get to be that color? And I'm like, I drank a lot of chocolate milk. And then he put it down. He was like, can I have water? And I'm just like, I'm not even that dark. So like, where are you getting this from? You are not even in pre-K. Like, what is it that's feeding you? So then why did your mother even hire me if she's the one feeding this into you? Like, what influences have you been? Have you just internalized that because there's an otherness automatically there? Or just even, again, in Indiana, being like South Jackson, it was rarely ever busy, but this day it was busy. Trying to ride a bike that was way too big for me. And so there's oncoming traffic, and then there's a pickup truck behind me with a whole bunch of Confederate flags around it and just shouting out racial slurs of all kinds, and then trying to run me into oncoming traffic. And then the other person had grace enough to just stop so that I can ease my way onto the sidewalk that's on the other side, while he like threw some stuff out of his window as he like drove away shouting those racial slurs. So like, I have been through some things, but I know that I've been privileged in the way that I haven't experienced it the way that other people who identify as Black as well have experienced it, just because of colorism.
That's a big thing. Like, I think just the fact that you are self-aware of that, like, speaks volumes, because some people are just like, no, I am like, we're all Black. It's all part of, like, but people really do see color. Like, the outside is what people will always see first. And that don't matter what we're talking about. You can be talking about relationships or just judgment in general. What you see is how people are going to judge you. Unfortunately, that is the case. And what societal norms have created in the United States is that darker is looked, down on, and it's not as great as being lighter. That's why they had like this light skin, long hair, green eyes is supposed to be like the woman that everybody is aspiring to be,
yeah.
Which is a myth, like, which is complete bullshit. But what I'm trying to say is I get where you're coming from.
Absolutely. When I think about, like, I feel like the most prevalent micro trauma has been like this idea around citizenship to the different communities I'm a part of.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like, where I grew up, you were either African American or you were white. Mm-hmm. And I'm clearly like, I know I'm not white. And my mom is darker than me. And so I'm like, oh, my stepfather is African American. My sister looks like me. Oh, we Black. Duh. Like, okay, we just speak Spanish. Like, don't know how that happened, but that is who we are. And then it wasn't until high school where there was a Spanish speaking population, but like Central Americans, South Americans. And there are a lot of differences culturally, a lot. And even more so, what's more staunch is like the difference aesthetically. Mm-hmm. Right. And so like thinking about like citizenship in the community that spoke Spanish and in this Black community that I had just naturally always been like, this is who I'm a part of, this is where I belong. Yeah. So knowing that like the times where like I'm not Black enough, like for some reason it was something, my hair looked a little different that day. When I slick it down, it was a little different than my home. Mm-hmm. She used black gel and I use Eco Styler. So it was like, oh, I put mousse in my hair. She's like, what the hell is that supposed to do? So like in those moments, I'm not Black enough. But I remember being in high school, literally running to the bathroom between every single class to wet my hair so that it would be long again. So they would stop asking me if I cut it in school or why my hair got so short and dry. Why did it become this? And just knowing like that it just didn't seem to, nothing about me seemed to fit in either group perfectly. There was always some moment where I felt like I was an outsider, and knowing how unsettling that felt, because I don't know how to reconcile that isolation. I don't know what to do or how to be to not, to satisfy whatever the expectation in this moment is. And also, unfortunately, feeling like those moments of isolation were very intentional by those doing it to me, that it was a choice, that all of a sudden it was like, I was Black for too long in the conversation, so now we're going to cut it off. Or I was Spanish, but like now it's getting a little weird because why is this Spanish girl listening to soca music? What is that? So just all of these, to me, the biggest micro trauma was just like citizenship, like because being Afro-Latina, being that specific kind of Black, not being African-American, and knowing that was the only kind of Black I grew up understanding, just really feeling like not without, but almost like with too much. Like there isn't enough space on this page for me to put this all in. They won't let me check all the boxes, you know, and just like grappling with that. That feels, it's not the only, you know, only one, but that one felt the most prevalent. Like it had the biggest impact on me.
Like I felt that really deeply. I just want you to know.
Thank you.
I felt that. Because that feeling of isolation is real. And I might not have that experience, but I had that experience as a Black girl, like I said, in a white space, you know. And it's funny because I, for the people who can't see me on the podcast, you know, I'm chocolate skinned. I might not be super, super dark, but I'm brown. You can't, you won't be able to see otherwise. You won't guess anything else. I look Black with dreads and glasses. And I was like this. I had gotten dressed when I was 11, I think. So it's actually been a part of my identity. And I bring that out because I didn't even, when I was preparing for this podcast, I didn't even write this down. But I think when I was thinking about the moments where I began to feel at least okay with what I look like, it came with my lock journey. Otherwise, I just didn't know what to do with myself. Like the microaggression or the micro traumas that I felt probably had to do with all the times I felt wrong in a space. Just whether when I was around my friends, you know, like girls, you know, us girls, we like, when we have friends, we like to cheer on each other's clothes, you know, like you switch jeans. I could never do that with my friends, you know, like they never really had the same shape as me. My hips was too wide and, you know, I was starting to, you know, develop in different ways. And like, I was not thin enough because the ideal of beauty was the thin white girl with long straight hair. Right. And I remember so many times, I actually like looked back on like some of my journals. I used to journal a lot. And like every other page was the narrative of me talking about some boy who didn't like me, like some boy who did not, you know, who literally would verbally say, like one kid, I remember we was on the bus, and he was like Pakistani or something like that. And, you know, like there's only a few of us caramel people anyway. So, you know, we was kind of close. And I remember talking to him, you know, standing on the back. And he had told me, he was like, you know, I like you, but I couldn't really get with a Black girl. You know, it just wouldn't be right. I don't know. And I remember asking why. And I'm maybe like 14, like 13, 14. I don't really understand why, right? I just know there's this boy, we vibe. I think he likes me. He just told me I was not acceptable to like. Not that he didn't have a like for me, but I was not acceptable to like. And I think the hardest part about those kind of experiences, because there was one after the other, was the fact that we still remained in relationship. Like we still remained friends, if you want to call that. Like, and so I remember so many relationships that I had where I knew that people did not value me. They did not see me. They did not see that I was beautiful. They did not see like what I had to offer. And yet we were still in relationship with each other. They still benefited from me. They still got my friendship. They still got my relationship. And as I think about it, I'm like, what could that have done to like 10-year-old me, 12-year-old me? 13-year-old me, you know, that's trying to figure out who they are as a woman, wanting to be cute, wanting to be liked, in a space where like I've been rejected by Black men, I've been rejected by white men, I have been rejected by just everybody. Everybody knew that they wanted to be with someone other than a Black girl. And if it was a Black girl, it was a light-skinned Black girl that could pass as white, right? But it was never me. And I think that was more.
Yo, that's a really powerful story, and I can really just like empathize with you on that and sympathize, just because that's kind of how my walk of life was too. Like, growing up, I was one, and I said this before in another podcast, but I was also one of 6 Black people in my school. Like Alabama is where I'm from, so you know, one of the last states to desegregate. I was only like one of 6 black people in my school, and I remember like not like hating that I was black, but just not appreciating it, or like almost being like shameful to be black, just because there were no other black people at the school, and like all the white girls, you know, I'm trying to, you know, I'm still a kid, like I'm trying to holler at females, I'm trying to pick up, like I'm trying to touch a titty for the first time, like everybody else trying to do, and so I would try to act the same way that the other white kids did, but I would not get the same response. It'd be like almost like a disgust response, or like a you know better response. Like, you're black, why would you even think that this would work? And like I remember getting so bad to the point like that I didn't even look at it as like anything wrong. It was just like kind of understood. Like I was literally being fucked in the head, like going through middle school. High school is when I finally made the change. But I remember just feeling like, okay, well, if she doesn't want him, then maybe there's a chance that she'll want me. But I was never the first choice. Like, and it's because, and you know, you could blame it on not having a father in the household, whatever you want to blame it on. But that shit is real. That's traumatizing right there. And sometimes you don't even realize it until you realize it, and then it hits you at once, and you're like, what the fuck happened? Like, what? Why did I ever let that happen? You start asking yourself all these questions. Like, so I totally get what it's like. And I remember one thing that messed me up the most was a black girl came to my school for the first time or whatever. She was not attractive. I was not attracted to her at all. But I remember like all the white people in the school trying to set me up with this black girl just because she was black and I was black. And I ain't gonna lie to you, I ain't never been in so many situations where we were alone than before she came to the school. Like, it was like they would set it up for us to talk. We have like some alone time in the lunchroom. We had some alone time at PE. And I'm like, I don't even know where all this alone time came from. But it was just like, at that point, I was like, nah, I'm good. Like, that's not what I'm trying to do. So that almost put me off of black women because they were trying to force it so hard. Like, luckily, like, as I told Brian, my mom, you know, she kind of brought me back around. But no, I totally get that. And I appreciate all of y'all sharing. That was some really heartfelt shit. I love where this is going. So I do want to bring y'all to the next question. So the next question that I have for y'all is, as a woman of color, what privileges or disadvantages do you feel are associated with skin complexion? And then I guess ask yourself or tell me if you think this is because of skin color or it's because of your nationality.
I was thinking about this. And I feel like my privilege and my disadvantage are the same. Or at least the one that stands out most to me. And for me, it is like being fetishized or eroticized by others, everyone being hypersexually attracted. And so I think that's something that comes with being lighter skinned and with being an Afro-Latina comes like this extreme hypersexualization. Like, there is sexy is just put on me. Like, it is feedback I've been given in the classroom. And it's like literally like, oh, something about you just feels really sexy. Oh, because I love Othello. Yeah, like, I don't know why I feel so sexy other than I know how to teach and make this shit sexy. But like, I'm not shaking titties. Like, I'm at work, dressed, everything covered, you know, like, so it's just, it'll be mind blowing to me like that. Or even like in the moments, like going to do laundry and like really coming out the house intentionally looking a hot mess. And like, I know that we all want to throw Drake lines, but I don't look the prettiest with no makeup on. And I don't. It's just true. Sometimes it's really not the cutest look. Natural is every day. My natural don't always work. And so it's like, you can't tell me you're talking to me because I'm really the sexiest right now. It's just this natural assumption of like, there is something sexual about me. And so knowing that that has often been a privilege, like that would often get me through the door, get me to a conversation, is someone betting on if I do this, there's some type of sexual transaction about to happen. But then it immediately becomes a disadvantage because I'm not doing that. And I really feel that I have the tools and the qualifications that merit whatever it is I'm going for, looking to attain. And so it's like the second that I decide to make it very clear that there is nothing to be gained sexually, the privilege has gone out the window. Like, it is no longer there. It has been reneged and it's not on the table. And so for me, it's always been like, and I always think about like pretty politics of like, yes, it is a privilege to be seen as attractive, especially like this mainstream, socially acceptable attractive. But knowing that that coupled with already being a woman and knowing quite often what our value is equated to, that is just doubling it. And it really feels like it takes away from whatever it is I bring to the table as a person. And it just makes me some object, and it just becomes this constant reminder of like, as a woman, men have access to my body. As a Black person, everybody got access to my body, and feeling like this just constantly, this privilege becomes a disadvantage that just always makes me feel like very exposed, very vulnerable. No one's ever like looking at me for the right reason. So like for me, that definitely feels like what it is for me.
Right. And going off of that, it's like you said that it can get you through the door, but even your qualifications are still like, your qualifications could get you even beyond that. And I think that's what it is. It's like it can get you through the door, but because of the identity, the intersectionality that we hold, it's like they're automatically going to stop you as soon as you get through the door, right? It's like, and then no matter how much that you do, and we've been talking about like nepotism and versus meritocracy, like, so no matter how much you merit, unless if it's another person who is not denying their Blackness, they're going to be the one to like, hey, I'm on the come up. So like, I'm going to bring you up with me because I see that you earn it. I see that you want it. And it's not just nepotism, and it's not just, you know, something that, okay, so I've earned this, but yeah, I'm still in the same place. Just because you see me as my worth is just in my body, my worth is just in my face value. So all I can be is at the front desk, you know? And I think something else that it is that reminds me of is Bell Hooks. She talks about the mind, body, and the public-private divide, and how as Black women, we do not have the privilege of having the body be public or our mind be public, but the space in which we exist is the body in the private and not necessarily our mind in the public. But if our body is in the public, it is, I mean, you know, out there for criticism. It's out there for, okay, so how can I emulate this, but then make it sexy because I put it on a light person. And then another thing that I think about is how, and I know we had this conversation about Black men, but it also happens to Black women that a teacher can throw a Black young girl across the room, and then they automatically want to call her a young Black woman, and she should have known better. She shouldn't have spoken back. And then we start having expectations about like, oh wait, you should have been more mature at some point in this process. Like your growth has to be at an exponentially quick, you know, it has to happen sooner than, you know, someone else's who gets to go outside and play in the playground with their water gun and not be shot. Mm-hmm. You know, and so I think it's just the expectations that are put there, like you have to be mature, or you have to look a certain type of way, and you have to exist in a certain type of way, talk in a certain type of way. This is what you're limited to, and this is when you have to have it by.
God damn it, Felicia going off. Yeah, remind me, bro, we got to get a soundboard, bro, because she has some damn, I'm not Joe Budden, bro, but I would have hit the gunshot. I would have hit the fucking little air horn on a couple of them moments. Yo, you was going in just now. Love this shit. What you got, Kandyce?
Well, I mean, I want to jump off of that because remember our conversation, especially when we're talking about like who is afforded protection and who is not afforded protection, right? Because we have to remember, like in our country, it's created to basically make the white woman the pristine, the protected, that which represents what is most pure and most feminine, right? And so when I think about the question, when you ask the question, like what privileges or disadvantages to skin color, like that are associated with skin complexion, anything that's closer to a white woman with protection, right? And so I think about like even in the example of like the young Black girls, like in classes that police can literally throw across the room, and we could see video over and over again of different Black girls doing that. It's almost as if the darker skin the baby, the more she is no longer a baby. She no longer afforded what is protected. She is no longer cute and innocent, but instead she is a woman. Instead she is acting fast. Instead she is being like basically adultified, like a 12-year-old is an adult, right? And we do that. I think we also do that in our communities across the skin privilege. And so when I think about like what does what does light skin versus dark skin allow you to do? I think it gives access. Like light skin can give you access, makes people feel comfortable. And makes white people
let your guard down, feel safe, so to speak, right?
Like you are the acceptable Black person. If we're gonna have a diversity board, at least it'll be a light-skinned Black person, so I feel good about, we have the Black representation. Only one though. But like, right, like only just that one on the board, but that's it. Right. And so when you think about, when I'm thinking about like what privileges are coming up, like I think about the fact that pretty in our society equals light skin. Like, and like, I don't know, you guys seen the new Nina Simone movie? Was Always Saldana. Okay, I'm not even gonna lie. I was of the camp that was upset. I'm gonna be real serious. But here's why I was upset, right? One, they got sis with some blackface on. I don't understand why they had her makeup so not even smooth. Like we don't even do makeup like that, right? Like who was your makeup artist? First of all, like
a white woman.
We could literally see your face. You look like you in blackface. It's not her fault. It's just the makeup artist's fault. I'm not gonna go in there. I'm not bringing down a Black woman. But I think it's a problem, right? Because she was representing Nina Simone, a woman who has outwardly talked about being dark skinned. That was part of her struggle. Like seeing the actual like documentary of Nina Simone and then seeing this movie, like you're just like, how in the world do we have a light skinned Black woman playing this very dark skinned, like extremely like powerful Black woman? Like it's almost like the media was not ready. Like America was not ready to see a dark skinned woman in that role. No. And so I'm upset. It upset me because it seemed disrespectful to the legacy that was Nina Simone, who got up there and who was a activist who literally fought like to be seen, like when they did not want her to be seen as a classical artist, like as somewhere where she would have been around a whole lot of white folks. They didn't like her anyway because of her skin. Anyway, so the very fact that we can't even see a dark-skinned Black woman on the stage in this light, I thank God for Lupita. How do you say it? Nyong'o, or Denai, like Gura, like because they have been seen and shown in the light that it's like dark-skinned Black women are beautiful, and the narrative is changing, but it's not changed yet, right? Like it's not yet.
Not by landslide, yeah.
Like being in the industry, like I'm an actress, producer, and a director. So like being in that, it comes to having more of our people in the writing room. It comes to having more of our people in the director's chair, in the producing chair, in the casting offices. And it's like, okay, you've been told so much that this is not the space for you. So it's like, it's your time to claim it now that everyone's like, all of these white people are filled with, like, use it, you use this time, use this space, and yes, it's unfortunate that that's what it's coming out of, but look at the thing that's going to come out of it,
We're going to go ahead and take a pause right here just because this is a lot of good information. We want you to consume everything that's been talked about. These women have been dropping gems. I hope y'all been picking them up.
Yeah, like a lot of stuff was talked about. A lot of information was covered. Just very insightful conversation. Yeah, thank you.
Most definitely. So we're going to take a pause right here, but we definitely going to be back. Y'all stay tuned.